Hey everybody, Debo here. As you guys know, this week the PTR 2.3 has been updated to its second iteration, where they made significant changes to the Helltooth build, and they also made significant changes to the Archers or Archers or Archers set, however you pronounce it. One which is the new set, and one which is of course Helltooth, which has been really bad for a long time. Today I am going to be covering the Helltooth build with the small man's finger combination. Now let's just go ahead and just talk about Helltooth real quick. If you remember in the last patch, it didn't include Zombie Dog or Gargantuan in this in the last patch. But the cool thing is they actually included Gargantuan and Zombie Dog to be affected that if you hit a target with your Necrosis, it would actually allow for the target to be able to, or it increases the damage that the Gargantuan and the Zombie Dogs would do. So if you look at it right here, the two-piece set, enemies hit by your primary skills, blah 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 blah, Wall of Death, get affected by Necrosis, becoming slow, taking 1000% weapon damage every second, and 15% increased damage from all sources. The 15% increased damage from all sources is a very nice addition to everything. We'll make it a nice two-piece set. It gives it a little bit of oomph, and then, you know, increase 15% damage. You can't really hate on that. Four-piece set, like I commented before, I was really happy. I was like, well, 40% was okay, but I hope they buffed it up to 50, and they did. After applying Necrosis to enemies, you take 50% reduced damage for 10 seconds. You just got to make sure you get your Necrosis up. If you get caught off guard and you don't have Necrosis on somebody, you can instantly die, but that's not a bad thing. You just got to be on top of your game with that. And then, of course, for the six-piece set, after casting Wall of Death, gain 30% increased damage for 12 seconds to your primary skills, Ash Cloud, Fire Bat, Zombie Charger, Zombie Dog, etc. The effect stacks up to 3 times. So, you know, you cast your 3 zombie walls, you get the increased effect, and you use one of those skills to deal all your damage. And this version of the build, I've seen 2 people been doing it to get to 60 on Greater Rifts. One has been using the Wrathful Protector in combination with the Small Man's Finger. One's been with using like Grim Reaper in combination with the new Shiffers. I forgot what it's called. The second iteration of it is using the Scrimshaw to get the reduced mana cost for the Zombie Charger, and basically running right in and just doing Zombie Charger with Grim Reaper. And the cool thing about it now, they have made it so that mimics, when they do mimic your abilities, it does count or combo in with your Helltooth build. So what does that mean, Debo? So basically, if you hit a non-monster with Necrosis, with your Zombie Wall, not only will you do increased damage when you hit it, when you produce a mimic, when the mimic casts one of the skills that fit in the description of what the Helltooth qualifies for. If, let's say that you hit it with Necrosis, you start doing zombie berries, and then the mimics come out and they start casting zombie berries, you guys will all be doing the extra modified damage from the Helltooth. So that makes it pretty damn viable if you want to go zombie chargers with Helltooth. I'll be covering that in another video, but today I just wanted to showcase the Helltooth with the Gargantuan combination. It works out quite well. We're going to go ahead and just get right into it. Now, the biggest combo of this, of course, is using the 6-piece Helltooth set in combination with the Short Man's Finger, which makes it so that it doubles the damage of the Gargantuan and splits it into 3 smaller Gargantuans. We're going to be using the Wrathful Protector, which is the strongest one out of all of them, but it only lasts for 15 seconds, and it rages as it comes out, does a tremendous amount of damage, and knocks back enemies. So, pretty much, between using the Helltooth set with the Short Man's Finger, and also the Jerome's Bracers to allow us to cast up to 3 zombie walls to really get the maximum amount of that Helltooth, that's going to do a lot of damage. Of course, we have SNK and other things that will amp up the damage, but basically to showcase you the gear and how I got everything set up. Int Vitality, crit percent chance socket, reduce cooldown skills with the Helltooth Mask. We also have the shoulders. Wish I had Int and Vitality, but you basically want cooldown reduction in Gargantuan. Cooldown reduction is very important in this build. Helltooth Tunic, Int Vitality, Gargantuan damage, pretty much straightforward. Your Jerome's Bracers, whatever stats you can get, but you want fire for the elemental, Int Vitality, crit chance. And then Tasker and Theos, these might be tough to get, but I luckily had some extra ones laying around. I was able to get Int, critical percent chance, critical damage, and cooldown reduction, because cooldown reduction is very important for this build, like I reiterate. Belt of Transcendence, pretty straightforward, just a lot of tanky stats, so that, you know, we can generate those extra fetishes to combo off for SNK. And then Eye of Elich, which is real nice because it reduces the damage taken. If you don't have an Eye of Elich, I probably recommend actually the Hellfire Amulet to get the extra passive, because the extra passive in this build is very strong. So a lot of the guys who were able to push this build to 60, they had a lot of Paragon points, a lot of Paragon, really nice quality on all their items, and then they also, more specifically, had a Hellfire Amulet. The Convention of Elements is a damage amplifier, so when it falls under the fire element, we'll be able to do what we need to do, and it'll get a lot of damage in. As you can see, I have critical percent chance, critical damage, and cooldown reduction, because like I said, you need a ton of cooldown reduction for this build. Shortman's Finger, and critical percent damage and cooldown reduction. And then I also have my SMK, I have percent damage and a cooldown reduction. Not the greatest weapon. If I had an ancient one, I think I could do a lot more, but we'll have to wait until we get one. Helltooth. Pants, int vitality and armor, and also the boost int vitality, all resistance armor, and then this is pretty nice, Ukapin Serpent, int vitality, critical percent chance, and gargantuan damage. Or you can go cooldown reduction, that's kind of up to you. I prefer the gargantuan damage because I want to ink out every single point of damage. So we're sitting at 1.3 million DPS, 13.7 million toughness, and we also have 54% on the critical chance, so I also have 450% critical damage, which is not that bad overall. Our certain gems are Enforcer for the increased damage for pets. The Bane of the Trap, since we're going to be using the Communing with Spirits. We'll explain why we're using that in a little bit. And we're also using Gugaka Swiftness to get the extra cooldown reduction. Now, if we look at it right now, we're at 48.1 cooldown reduction plus the 15% that the Gugaka Swiftness is going to provide us. So that's very important. 40-30% critical, gargantuan damage. And then for our cube options, on the cube options, we're running Furnace for the increased damage versus elites, Jerome, of course, for the increased pet damage. And then we're also running the Ring of Royal Grandeur, so that allows us to run our Tasker and Theo. So that's our cube items. And pretty much with the Paragon points, all points into movement speed until you max it out. And then, of course, rest going to intelligence. You always want to get cooldown reduction first with this build, then critical percent chance and critical damage. I don't know why I have it set up like this. That's a little bit weird, but you do want to get your cooldown reduction first, your hit chance, critical hit chance, and critical hit damage, and then the last points can go to attack speed. And then, of course, you want the armor, life percent, then resist all, and then the rest of the points into life regeneration. And then the last tree, you want the resource cost reduction, area damage, life on hit, and the rest can just go into whatever. So those are the specific, that's the gear that I'm using for this build. Oh, my mind drew a blank. Well, that's the gear that I'm using. I showed you guys the Paragon, and I showed you my Kanai cube options and everything like that. So that's pretty much straightforward on what the build is. I'm going to go ahead and just Alt-Tab here. Shouldn't have too much of a problem. This is a recording from the stream when I did 55 today. And I'm just going to commentate and talk through it because it's kind of hard for me to do two things at once. And I'm visited by the dog. Hopefully the dog I'm babysitting does not start barking through this video. But let's just go ahead and get this started. It's a 14-minute video, so this will end up making the whole video about 22 minutes long. Not too much to explain. Oh, forgot to talk about the skills. Well, we'll go over that after we get done with the Greater Rift. The main thing with this build is just simply you want to have, all you have to do is just cast the zombie walls 3 in a row to amp up the damage, drop your Gargantuan Big Bad Voodoo, and that's it. Your zombie dogs are just out there to help you absorb damage from the Ukapin Serpent that you have, and also they're on Leeching Beast, so they get me back a little bit of life. I probably should have set them on to, I don't know. In all honesty, and what I actually set it on, I probably should have set it to the absorbed damage of 10%, because I don't think the life on hit was really doing me that much of a service, but then again, I could be wrong. So, I mean, that's pretty much all you pretty much do with the build. You have a lot of toughness as long as you keep the zombie wall, up. The Gargantuan is going to be doing billions of crits of damage, especially when the Convention of Element lines up and goes through the fire element portion of it. These zombie dogs will help tank monsters away from you, and also help you with the leeching life effect to get you back some life in some sticky situations. The zombie wall, the reason why we choose the frozen one, or the communing of the spirits, is because when you hit the targets with the communion of the spirits, why I think it's the best zombie wall one is because it makes it so that they do 25% less damage to you, and that actually helps out a lot. So when you think about it, you got the Ukapin Serpent that's reducing damage with the dogs by 30%. You have the 50% effect from the Helltooth, which helps out a lot. And then on top of that, you have the enemies do 25% less damage for you, so that definitely helps out with a lot of survivability, because I'm not running Spirit Vessel right now. I'm actually running Wall of Splendor of Passing Skills, but I know I'm not running Spirit Vessel right now, so if I die, I die, and that's not definitely a good thing. This version or iteration of the build I feel is very easy, because as long as you can just drop these zombie walls and just stay a good distance and just make sure you keep resummoning Gargantuans up, you'll have no problem. Now keep in mind the Gargantuans only stay out for 15 seconds, but with all the cooldown reduction we have and Tribal Rights, we're able to get it down to an acceptable amount, and I do believe I'm also using Grave Injustice to help reduce that time, so I can make sure I always have the Gargantuans up. Sometimes you might get a little bit of a crazy rift, sometimes you can get pretty decent ones. I felt like this wasn't too hard to get up to 55 with the gear that I had and how I played it. I felt like it was pretty consistent. But once you do start getting towards 55 or up, then it starts to test you, or you start to look for certain type of rifts and stuff like that. High Paragon levels, extra Hellfire Amulets, all those little things, Ancient on the SMK, so on and so forth, will all basically to pick whether or not you're going to have an easier time or a harder time, and then you just got to basically keep grinding it until you get the certain rifts that you want. I'm always keeping moving. I just try to stay ahead. The main thing is I always try to drop the Gargantuan right on top of the elites with the Big Bad Voodoo. Usually they can take them down pretty quick. And always just keep up my haunt with Poison Spirit. That's just so I can up the damage of everything and keep it going pretty much straightforward. I mean, that's pretty much about it. I feel overall with the set of what they did is pretty cool with the Gargantuan and the Zombie Dog, but at this point I kind of feel like I'm just playing another iteration of a pet build. I feel like the zombie wall is really not doing anything in terms of making me feel like, well, I guess, you know, I think the true version of this build is better done with when you're using the zombie bears itself to do most of the damage. But even in that situation, it's still pretty clunky, because you got to cast the zombie walls, and you got to cast your zombie charger, and you run out of mana. I mean, even in this one, it's still kind of clunky, because you got to make sure you get all the enemies inside the zombie wall, and then set your Gargantuans up, and what have you not. I do like the damage increase that they did. I think the damage can go up a little bit higher, just as in comparison to Carnival, because the people that are hitting like 60, I haven't seen anybody hit 61 or 62. I imagine somebody possibly can, but the big problem is, it's just that, you know, the problem that I have is that the amount of effort you have to put into the gear and the setup and getting all that cooldown reduction and getting the right rolls and all that gear. You saw the gear I had. It was pretty stacked. The thing that bugs me the most is that Carnival can get higher for less effort, for not worrying too much about perfect itemization on everything and not tripping on little things like that. You just need the soothing pieces. The hardest part of the Carnival build might be just the Kanai pieces, or, you know, what are you going to put in the Kanai? Getting the good, well, actually not, I don't think that's going to be hard. I think, well, I mean, the SMK might be the hardest thing to find in Season, or a decent dagger or darts, but I digress. I just feel like, for what it's worth, I'd rather run Carnival, right? Like I said, I don't think it needs to be on the same level as Carnival, but I mean, I think they could up the damage just a little bit more. And outside of that, if they just up the damage a little bit more, and I don't know how you would make it less clunky unless you modify one of these zombie wall runes or something, or make it cast differently. But it plays a little clunky to me. I don't know how they can make it play a little bit smoother. I don't know if they should just make it so that everything in the zombie wall gets affected by it, or I keep calling it zombie wall, the wall of death. I don't know, maybe they can let the wall of death stack, or maybe when you cast it and you have the Drom's Bracer, it automatically just cast it in a really huge area. That would be pretty interesting, or like make things a lot easier. You know, I really don't know how they can clean it up. And because it's such a weird skill, it just feels like, okay, it basically just feels like an overglorified Paragonus or something like that, just because you're casting it to amp up the damage of your to get necrosis onto the targets, and then let your your pets and everything do the damage they need to do. Like I said, I don't want to rag too much on Blizzard. They've been doing a pretty good job. At least the developer behind the Witch Doctor, Mr. Yang, I do believe his name is. He's been doing a pretty good job trying to get it to be viable and doing more damage with the Helltooth set, and there is potential. I mean, last time I showed you guys the video, we did 48, and that wasn't too great, but we did this 55 pretty convincingly, and I've seen people go up to 60, so the set has improved a lot. But like I said, just need to clean it up a little bit. I don't know how we can make it play smoother. I don't know how we can make it not play so clunky, and maybe just a little bit more damage, and I think the set will be perfectly fine. It actually would be able to do pretty competitive. If it was able to get to 65, I think that's a fantastic limit for the build. If it hit 65, I think that would be pretty cool. But then again, like I said, for the amount of gear and everything you got to put into it and the paragons and stuff, I think most people will still just run Carnival. And I mean, that's just kind of how the cookie crumbles in some situations. So halfway through the dungeon, like I said, there's not much else to say here. Man, I can't even talk today. There's not too much to say. All it is staying close to the enemy to get the Grave Injustice effect to go off when I kill the monsters, which will help reset the Gargantuan and keep dropping Big Bad Voodoo with the guards, with the zombie or the Wall of Deaths, amping up the damage, and the zombie dogs are there too to help absorb damage for us. And I mean, that's pretty much about it. The one funny thing is, I was running this build all day today without Midnight Feast, and I felt like pretty much like an idiot. And if you guys know what Midnight Feast is, that's 50% increased damage on your Gargantuan and your dog, so that was pretty funny today. And I sat there and I was like, why am I not doing more damage like I saw some of the guys do? And I'm like, oh, I gotta have that on. I don't know if I'm gonna farm a Helltooth Amulet. I would kind of like to on the PTR, to get one where I can go ahead and have one of those additional increased damage passives or Gruesome Feast or something like that, because that additional damage would definitely help out a lot inside this this dungeon, and then trying to get an Ancient SMK or something like that, but that's easier than said than done. That's the only thing I think could, and that along with combination of getting a high level Paragon could actually make a big difference, especially if I get Gruesome Feast. Once you hit about 1,000 Paragon, and you're running Gruesome Feast, that damage increase, it scales dramatically up with how much intelligence you got. And once you get all the max stats in every single category, then the only points you can put Paragon at points to are into intelligence and into vitality. So when you see a lot of the higher guys are running Gruesome Feast, the reason is because they got such high, like a level Paragon, like 1,000 or higher, they just put all their points in intelligence. Additional points in intelligence, and the Gruesome Feast scales very strongly. Based upon how much intelligence you have. The more int you have, the more scary it becomes. And almost going towards the dungeon here, about 3/4 of the way through. And as you can see, I got a pretty lenient dungeon. Nothing too complex, nothing too crazy. These are just basically zombies and stuff. And as you see, the Gargantuans get in there and they do their 2 billion crits, or a couple billion crits. When they have their fire thing up, they do a lot of damage. I've seen them do up to 11 billion and some other crazy stuff. So, it works. The Gargantuans do their job. They do a great amount of damage. Sometimes it's a little bit chaotic because they don't hit the target that you want to. Rift Guardians pretty much don't stand any chance. And sometimes the AoE does get pretty annoying. I feel like if the Wall of Death was a little bit stronger, or not as crazy, or just basically just did more damage, I think there would be a good potential to be able to naturally push towards the higher rifts. But I mean, all in all, like I said, I enjoyed this version of the Helltooth better than the last one that they had. Just damage was way too low, and I felt like I was struggling a little bit too much. This build started to do respectable damage and be able to take care of certain things and knock out and just be able to progress onward through the greater rifts. And I'm looking forward to test out the Acquire set next. I don't know how well that's going to go. I hope it goes pretty well. I'm kind of dreading it because they only increase the damage from the 500% increase for certain spells and abilities up to 800%. but they have done some different stuff with the fire bats. They switched some things around. I still don't think fire bats is going to be that great, but we're going to see how that's going to go. And I was looking at that point, and I was like, oh man, I didn't put my Paragon points into what I needed to do. But that happens when you're switching between characters, because this is on non-season. And we're getting towards the end. Just pushing through some zombies and some other basic stuff and skeletons. This is basically the miracle rift I used to joke about before. It's the rift where everything kind of just goes well. And as you saw, I just got closer so I can drop the gargantuan so they can do their damage. And they do really good job on taking out elites and what have you not. And you don't want to stand too far away because you want to make sure you get your grave injustice reductions when enemies die. You see how fast they die. Very easy. And should be spawning the boss on the next level here. You're not always going to get dungeons like this, of course, with the zombies, but luckily I was able to fish a pretty good one. When I always talk about fishing for a good rift, this is an example of a good rift because the monsters are very easy, they're very basic, they're pretty stupid, and this can just make it so you can clear stuff. The other times you'll have Act 5 mobs and a lot of other crazy stuff, and you'll just be like, damn, I can't do anything, and then you just leave and you reset and you just load up another greater rift and you hope that you can actually get a better set of monsters. However, Blizzard did address that. They're going to look into maybe making it so that when you fight a monster that's really hard, it rewards you the appropriate amount of experience towards the monster that you kill. So if you kill like an easy zombie, it'll give you so much experience, but nowhere near, like, let's say an Act 5 mob, maybe you kill an Exorcist. Exorcist will give you like a lot more than a zombie. I think that's a smart idea, because at least then if players know, okay, this monster's tough, but it's going to give me one hell of a, amount of orbs, or it's going to give me, like, it's going to make that meter go up a lot. People won't mind fighting it, even if they do die, take a death or two. Because a lot of ways what people deal with it, I know at Carnival, every time I got to reflect inside the Greater Rift, I would just skip the monster, and Blizzard doesn't like that because it's kind of silly. And I do agree, it is pretty silly. When you get certain mob types that you just cannot fight, you just have to skip them. So, if you get a hard mob type and you die once or twice and you bust your balls trying to kill it, it should reward you the appropriate amount of experience to how difficult the monster is. Because, that just makes common sense. They're still changing some stuff with the vanilla items or some of the original legendary items and stuff. They changed the new bracers they implemented in for the fire bats, and they made those a little bit better. Made it so that when you're channeling fire bats, you take less damage. And you can see this is when things get pretty nuts. A couple seconds in, the boss is almost dead. That's why I think this build has potential, because it can kill the Greater Rift Guardian so well. The thing that slows it down is just the AoE part, the ads. And you see all the damage that the Gargantuans do, and they just does a really good job. And I'm just sitting back and just chilling, and you see the billions of crits that they do. And, luckily I was worried that the Gargantuans were going to target the wrong target, but I think their AI is a little bit better, and they went immediately on Hamlin. We finished the Greater Rift. And as you saw, we had about 30 seconds to spare. I felt like I can do 56 or 57 maybe with this gear. However, I'm going to be honest with you, it's not fun fishing. And if I had a higher Paragon and Helltooth, I probably could push up to 60 with this, no problem. But you got to get all the gear perfect, and that's just kind of awkward. Now, if you don't like running a pet Enforcer gym, I have seen some witch doctors, they run a Bane of the Powerful. That's for the extra elite damage, so they can smash through the elites no problem. So I like the changes to the build. I think it's going the right direction. I think it needs a little bit more tweaking. Other than that, I think they did a pretty good job on Helltooth now, but still got a little bit ways to go. Well, I won't say ways to go, just a little bit more. I know it seems like a lot, but it's just, if they don't get it to a point where it's at least somewhere in the vicinity, maybe Carnival's doing 70 and this build's doing 50, it's 63, 64, 65, at least some people will be like, okay, well that's cool, I don't care about running Carnival, I don't want to run it, this does 70, cool, but I'll just do 65 with a Helltooth and that's cool and it's something different. I think people would meet on the middle ground and they would be okay with that. But anyways, the skills that I'm running: Haunt with Poison Spirit, Wall of Death with Communing the Spirits, Spirit Walk with Jaunt, Summon Zombie Dogs with Leeching Beasts. This combos in with the, oh my gosh, this combos in with the Ukapin Serpent. It makes us take less damage as well, because it's going to make the dogs take 30% of our damage, and they're going to give us life back when they auto-attack. Gargantuan Wrathful Protector, obviously because it's the strongest Gargantuan out of all the ones you can use, and they do tons of damage. Big Bad Voodoo Slam Dance, increase the damage. Big things on the passives. Tribal Rights is necessary because you want the 25% reduction time on your Gargantuan. It's important, you gotta have that. Midnight Feast, that's another one you gotta have. This is where things can vary. Some people like to run Grave Injustice, some people don't. Some people like to run Pierce the Veil, some people don't, or some people run Confidence Ritual, you deal 25% additional damage to enemies within 20 yards. So basically the way it goes is, you're going to be pretty, if you don't mind being close at the time, Confidence Ritual will beat out the Pierce the Veil, so that's pretty straightforward, but then the Pierce the Veil always works regardless of the distance, so that's one thing you got to think of. Grave Injustice, I like it for the uptime of Gargantuan, makes my life a lot easier, but this kind of was a little bit of waste on bosses. But the main thing is, Tribal Rights and Midnight Feast are mandatory, I think. And then when Pierce the Veil or Confidence Ritual is great. And then if I had enough cooldown reduction, I probably would keep Grave Injustice. If I had one more passive to use or use a Hellfire Amulet, I probably would go with Gruesome Feast. And if not Gruesome Feast, probably just Confidence Ritual. I think Confidence Ritual will probably be the best because I don't have that high. I'm only like a Paragon level, 774? Nowhere near like 1,000. If I had 1,000, I would go Gruesome Feast, but I probably would do that. But those are the skills that I'm using. This, like I said, was pretty fun to do. I'll have another update video on Helltooth, showcasing it, using it with the Zombie Bear Charger. I'll get all that set up tomorrow, and I'll be testing that all day. So as always, I appreciate you guys watching the videos. Share, like, subscribe. Let everybody know what's going on. People want to know what's going on with the Witch Doctor, send them here. I got a bunch of information, and I think I'll remember to put some annotations so people can hear about the skills and stuff that I use. But anyways, I hope you guys have a good day. Good luck in your future endeavors. I'm Debo, and I'll see you guys in the next video.